Hi, everybody. This is Roni. Oh, shoot. What just happened? Oh, didn't have this threaded on enough. Darn it. Oh, yeah. Hold on. Made from junk stuff, you know. It works. You know? I just made some adjustments. Together. Let's see. Consistent. Oh, darn it. Something. My hair is stuck on my fingers. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Now, place the mic where we want it. The thingy down. Hanging on the thing. Okay, place it up and down where we want it. Right there, it looks like it. Hanging in our face. Well, you know what we can do is do this. And then do this. There we go. Now we're not got a microphone hanging in our camera shot. All right, here we go. So yeah, tonight is Atlas Shrugged. We're restarting it because we got an interrupted stream. So what we want to do is first, before we start our thingy. Oh yeah, hold on. Un momento. I'm going to put monitoring. I'm going to put my monitor in this other screen over here. We've got to exit this. There we go. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Select it over there. Get it on first. Turn it on. We got this weird. I don't know what it is. Oh, it's probably the FX generator or something. No, it's not. It's something else. This next one's got a few weird little quirks I gotta work out. Oh yeah, here. I don't do nothing until I do this. Okay, boom, there we got it. Now I can shove this over here. How's my hair look? How do I look? Okay, it's my bald spot showing. Okay, it's making sure my bald spot's not showing. It's unavoidable hard. Okay, put this over there. Okay. All right, now what we have in this screen over here in front of us is the music. We've got the announcement for our stream tonight that has some music we're going to play to and jam to first before we get off into our reading. Okay. And then because over here I got that ready to play, I do believe. We'll find out. Did I remember to do that or not? Anyway, for right now I just feel like jamming a little bit. Here, get this set up. Way down so we can get you on the microphone signal. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Is that it? Stop. I guess that's it. Okay, well, we're done with there, so we're going to close that stream. So, let's close that playback. Okay, so anyway. So let's get this other thing moved up now. It's a moving monitoring back over here for a second. Well, actually, I can just leave that up here. I'm going to pull up the other screen now. And boom, boom, oops. Boom, boom, boom. What? Beans? Screen wants something. Okay, other screen. Oh, we don't have it booted up. Darn it. Okay, now we got to make you guys wait while I boot up the sound effects, background playback. Here we go. Okay. So it's interesting the way it works. The way I've got just some info for nerds. I got my compact laptop interfaced through a Focusrite USB interfaced into subgroups 1 and 2 of my Yamaha MG32 14FX mixing console. Okay, and it's set up. Interfaced subgroups 3 and 4 are set up to my Hewlett Packard machine. It's set up for, and I'm getting ready to get booting up Cakewalk right now. I'm ready to set it up. It's got playback, and I can mix it if I need to, make minor adjustments in playback if I need to. Doing this thing, this is why I'm doing it. Why I didn't master it. And then as the time goes on, I'll get this. I'll just continue this whole thing. I'll have the whole chapter in a single audio recording, and I can render that whole chapter then. Okay, here we go. Starting. I'm going to start right now, yes. Alrighty. Oh, here we go. No, let's not start. Well, let's get a sound check. Let me get a level check. I've got to get a level check this. Okay, I think that's pretty good. See, there we go. Okay, now let's stop it. And I'll pull up my other monitor now so I can put my monitoring, what I'm doing, in my screen over here. And this is set up ready. So I can leave it, go back to the other one. Okay, there we go. Boom. Okay. And then we got my monitor right here. And we're set up. Okay. And then, here we go. Let's do it. Let me do it. Just go. Space is not, I haven't had a chance to really dial this space in yet. This is all still just mushed in here from pulling the carpet. A little washed out here. Oh, shoot. Okay, wrong one. There we go. That's getting better. Okay. Microphone off. Enjoy.
distinguish the bum's face. The bum had said it simply, without expression, but from the sunset far at the end of the street, yellow glint caught his eyes, and the eyes
We
looked
got to start it
straight
over.
at Eddie Willard,
You know why?
mocking and
It's
still,
because
as
something
if the
went wrong with the
question
sound.
had been addressed to the cause.
Okay, here. All right, here we go. Okay.
Who's John Gall? The light was ebbing, and Eddie Willard could not distinguish the bum's face. The bum had said it simply, without expression, but from the sunset far at the end of the street, yellow glint caught his eyes, and the eyes looked straight at Eddie Willard, mocking and still, as if the question had been addressed to the causeless uneasiness within him. "Why did you say that?" asked Eddie Willers, his voice tense. He leaned against the side of the doorway. The wedge of broken glass behind him reflected the metal yellow of the sky. "It doesn't," snapped Eddie Willers. He reached hastily into his pocket. The bum had stopped him and asked for a dime, then had gone on talking, so as if to kill that moment and postpone the problem of the next. Pleas for dimes were so frequent in the streets these days that it was not necessary to listen to explanations, and he had no desire to hear the details of this bum's particular despair. "Go get your cup of coffee," he said, handing a dime to the shadow that had no face. "Thank you, sir," said the voice without interest, and the face leaned forward for a moment. The face was wind-browned, cut by lines of weariness and cynical resignation. The eyes were intelligent. Eddie Willers walked on, wondering why he always felt it at this time of day, this sense of dread without reason. No, he thought, not dread. There's nothing to fear, just an immense diffused appreciation, with no source or object. He had become accustomed to the feeling, but he could find no explanation for it. Yet the bum had spoken as if he knew that Eddie felt it, as if he thought that one should feel it, and more, as if he knew the reason. Eddie Willers pulled his shoulders straight. In conscious self-discipline, he had to stop this, he thought. He was beginning to imagine things. Had he always felt it? He was 32 years old. He tried to think back. No, he hadn't, but he could not remember when it had started. The feeling came to him suddenly at random intervals, and now it was coming more often than ever. It's the twilight, he thought. I hate the twilight. The clouds and the shafts of skyscrapers against them, brown like an old painting in oil, the color of fading masterpiece. Long streaks of grime ran from under the pinnacles down the slender soot-eaten walls. High on the side of the tower was a crack in the shape of a motionless lightning, the length of 10 stories. A jagged object cut the sky above the roofs. It was half a spire, still holding the glow of the sunset. The gold leaf had long since peeled off the other half. The glow was red and still, like the reflection of a fire, not an active fire, but a dying one, which it is too late to stop. No, thought Eddie Willers. There was still nothing disturbing in the sight of the city. It looked as it had always looked. He walked on, reminding himself that he was late in returning to the office. He did not like the task which he had performed on his return, but it had to be done, so he did not attempt to delay it, but made himself walk faster. He turned a corner in the narrow space between the dark silhouettes of two buildings. As the crack of a door, he saw the page of a gigantic calendar suspended in the sky. It was the calendar that the mayor of New York had erected last year on top of a building so that citizens might tell the day of the month as they told the hours of the day by glancing up at a public tower. A white rectangle hung over the city, imparting shade to the men in the streets below. In the rusty light of this evening sunset, the rectangle said September 2nd. Eddie Wills looked away. He had never liked the sight of that calendar. It disturbed him in a manner he could not explain or define. The feeling seemed to blend with his sense of uneasiness. It had the same quality, as he thought suddenly that there was some phrase, a kind of quotation, that expressed what the calendar seemed to suggest, but he could not recall it. He walked, groping for a sentence that hung in his mind as an empty shape. He could neither fill it nor dismiss it. He glanced back. The white triangle stood above the roofs, saying an immovable finality, September 2nd. Eddie Willers shifted his glance down to the street to a vegetable pushcart at the stoop of a brownstone house. He saw a pile of bright gold carrots and fresh green of onions. He saw a clean white curtain blowing at an open window. He saw a bus turning a corner, expertly steered. He wondered why he felt reassured, and then why he felt the sudden, inexplicable wish that these things were not left in the open, unprotected against the empty space above. When he came to Fifth Avenue, he kept his eyes on the windows of the stores he passed. There was nothing he needed or wished to buy, but he liked to see the display of goods, any goods, objects made by men, to be used by men. He enjoyed the sight of a prosperous street. Not more than every fourth one of the stores was out of business. Its windows, dark and empty. He did not know why he suddenly thought of the oak tree. Nothing had recalled it. But he thought of it, and of his childhood summers on the Taggart estate. He had spent most of his childhood with the Taggart children, and how he worked for them, as his father and grandfather had worked for their father and grandfather. The great oak tree had stood on a hill over the Hudson in a lonely spot of the Taggart estate. Eddie Willers, age 7, liked to come and look at the tree. It had stood there for hundreds of years, and he thought it would always stand there. Its roots clutched in the hill like a fist with fingers sunk into the soil, and he thought that if a giant were to seize it up by the top, he would not be able to uproot it, but would swing the hill and the whole earth with it, like a ball at the end of a string. He felt safe in the oak tree's presence. It was a thing that nothing could change or threaten. It was his greatest symbol of strength. One night, lightning struck the oak tree. Eddie saw it the next morning. It lay broken in half, and he looked into its trunk as into the mouth of a black tunnel. The trunk was only an empty shell. Its heart had rotted away long ago. There was nothing inside, just a thin gray dust that was being dispersed by the whim of the faintest wind. The living power had gone, and the shape it left had not been able to stand without it. Years later, he heard it said that children should be protected from shock, from their first knowledge of death, pain, or fear. But these had never scared him. His shock came when he stood very quietly looking into the black hole of the trunk. It was an immense betrayal, the more terrible because he could not grasp what it was that had been betrayed. It was not himself. He knew, nor his trust. It was something else. He stood there for a while, making no sound. Then he walked back to the house. He never spoke about it to anyone, then or since. Eddie Wilmers shook his head as the screech of a rusty mechanism changing a traffic light stopped him on the edge of a curb. He felt anger at himself. There was no reason that he had to remember the oak tree tonight. It meant nothing to him any longer, only a faint tinge of sadness, and somewhere within him a drop of pain, moving briefly, vanishing, like a raindrop on the glass of a window, its course in the shape of a question mark. He wanted no sadness attached to his childhood. He loved its memories. Any day of it remembered now seemed flooded by a still brilliant sunlight. It seemed to him as if a few rays from it reached into his presence. Not rays, more like pinpoint spotlights that gave an occasional moment of glitter to his job, to his lonely apartment, to the quiet, scrupulous progression of his existence. He thought of a summer's day when he was 10 years old. That day, in a clearing of the woods, the one precious companion of his childhood told him what they would do when they grew up. The words were harsh and glowing like the sunlight. He listened in admiration and in wonder. When he was asked what he would want to do, he answered at once,
"Whatever is right."
And added,
"You ought to do something great. I mean, the two of us, together."
"What?" she asked. He said,
"I don't know. That's what we ought to find out. Not just what you said, not just business and earning living. Things like winning battles, or saving people out of fires, or climbing mountains."
"What for?"
she asked. He said,
"The minister said last Sunday that we must always reach for the best within us. What do you suppose is the best within us?"
"I don't know."
"We'll have to find out."
She did not answer. She was looking away, up at the railroad track. Eddie Willers smiled. He had said, "Whatever's right," 22 years ago. He had kept that statement unchallenged ever since. The other question had faded in his mind. He had been too busy to ask them, but he still thought it self-evident that one had to do what was right. He had never learned how people could want to do otherwise. He had learned only that they did. It still seemed simple and incomprehensible to him. Simple that things should be right, and incomprehensible that they weren't. He knew that they weren't. He thought of that as he turned the corner and came to the great building of the Taggart Transcontinental. The building stood over the street as its tallest and proudest structure. Eddie Willers always smiled at his first sight of it. Its long bands of windows were unbroken in contrast to those of its neighbors. Its rising lines cut the sky with no crumbling corners or worn edges. It seemed to stand above the years, untouched. It would always stand there, thought Eddie Willers. Whenever he entered the Taggart building, he felt relief and a sense of security. This was a place of competence and power. The floors of its hallways were mirrors made of marble. The frosted rectangles of its electric fixtures were chips of solid light. Behind sheets of glass, rows of girls sat at typewriters, the clicking of their keys like the sound of speeding train wheels. And like an answering echo, a faint shudder went through the walls at times, rising from under the building, from the tunnels of the great terminal where the train started out to cross a continent and stopped after crossing it again, as they had started and stopped for generation after generation. Taggart Transcontinental, thought Eddie Willers. From ocean to ocean, the proud slogan of his childhood, so much more shining and holy than any commandment of the Bible. From ocean to ocean forever, thought Eddie Willers, in the manner of a rededication, as he walked through the spotless halls into the heart of the building, into the office of James Taggart, president of Taggart Transcontinental. James Taggart sat at his desk. He looked like a man approaching 50, who had crossed into his age from adolescence without the immediate stage of youth. He had a small, petulant mouth and thin hair clinging to a bald forehead. His posture had a limp, decentralized sloppiness, as if in defiance of his tall, slender body, a body with an elegance of line intended for the confident poise of an aristocrat, but transformed into the gawkiness of a lout. The flesh of his face was pale and soft. His eyes were pale and veiled, with a glance that moved slowly, never quite stopping, gliding off and past the things in eternal resentment of their existence. He looked obstinate and drained. He was 39 years old. He lifted his head with irritation at the sound of the opening door. Don't bother me. Don't bother me. Don't bother me, said James Taggart. Eddie Willers walked towards the desk. It's important, Jim, he said, not raising his voice. All right, what is it? Eddie Willers looked at a map on the wall of the office. The map's colors had faded under the glass. He wondered dimly how many Taggart presidents had sat before it and for how many years the Taggart Transcontinental Railroad, the network of red lines slashing the faded body of the country from New York to San Francisco, looked like a system of blood vessels. It looked as if once, long ago, the blood had shot down the main artery and, under the pressure of its own overabundance, had branched out at random points running all over the country. One red streak twisted its way from Cheyenne, Wyoming, down to El Paso, Texas. The Rio Norte line of Taggart Transcontinental. New tracing had been added recently, and the red streak had been extended south beyond El Paso. But Eddie Willers turned away hastily when his eyes reached that point. He looked at James Taggart and said, "It's the Rio Norte line." He noticed Taggart's glance moving down to a corner of the desk. "There's been another wreck." "Railroad accidents happen every day. Did you have to bother with that?" "You know what I'm saying, Jim. The Rio Norte line is done for. The track is shot down the whole line." "We are getting new track," Eddie Willers continued, as if there had been no answer. "That track is shot. It's no use trying to run trains down there. People are giving up trying to use them." "There's not a railroad in the country, it seems to me, that doesn't have a few branches running in a deficit. We're not the only ones. It's a national condition, a temporary national condition." Eddie stood looking at him silently. What Taggart disliked about Eddie Willers was this habit of looking straight into people's eyes. Eddie's eyes were blue, wide and questioning. He had blond hair and a square face, unremarkable except for that look of scrupulous attentiveness and open, puzzled wonder. "What do you want?" "I just came to tell you something you had to know. Because somebody had to tell you that we've had another accident, that we can't give up on the Rio Norte line." James Taggart seldom raised his head. When he looked up at people, he did so by lifting his heavy eyelids and staring upwards from under the expanse of his bald forehead. "Who's thinking of giving up on the Rio Norte line? There's never been any question of giving it up. I resent your saying it. I resent it very much. Scheduled it for the last 6 months. We haven't completed a run without some sort of breakdown, major or minor. We're losing all our shippers, one after another. How long? You're a pessimist, Eddie. You lack faith. That's what undermines the morale of an organization." "You mean nothing's going to get done about the Rio Norte line?"
And that's it for now. That's all we got done so far. That's the end of episode 1. So there we go. I hope if you'd enjoyed episode 1. Hopefully we can, as we get our thing done, we get this streamlined, it'll go a little quicker. So, and easier. And we'll get more done, and the episodes will be a little longer. So this has been 34 minutes already anyway. So even if it isn't so this is a 34-minute episode of this, and guess what? So I think what we're going to do is call it a done deal, and I'm going to call it a done day, a done deal, a done day. So what we're going to do is next Sunday, we're going to do it again, 10 o'clock. We were a little late this time, sorry, but we weren't quite set up. And so because of that, we because of that, well, out of tune. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Every time we end an episode, we'll end it with some a music thing, and we'll put down a music thing. And because it's direct feed, we can redirect through our mixer here. We can bring the signal out from the internet and back through and direct feed it back in again, direct feed without loss. Okay, so we get to go. The music we're putting in now, we're put down a rhythm track. We'll close it with the rhythm track. We'll open it with some soul-y stuff over the top of it. Huh? How about cool? So that's pretty cool. Isn't it? Sound on sound through the internet. So let's see, what are we going to do? It's Sunday, of course. That means that the E-Locrian mode is in play. And the month began here. Well, that's our one for the day. You know what? I got an idea too. I'll take this as a foundation this time. Every time I close it, I'll create a new foundation. And then through the week, as we produce it, we will take that. We will take what we've put down as a track and put it in the thing and use it and track over that with some more music. And then when the next stream starts, we'll add one more live track on top of that and the playback. Just like we did tonight. So it'll have we'll take this as the foundation, we'll add some drums and some bass and maybe some more rhythm or whatever, something. And then when we do live playback again, next Sunday, we'll hit this stream and grab this segment of this stream and play it back as a background track. Actually, it'll be all of this stream. We're going to grab this. This stream will be in playback in the program. And when the playback comes, we'll grab it and we intro. We'll play with it, and then turn it to the book. That sounds like a good program, huh, Boo? Yeah. Okay. So. And we just fade it out. See you next week. Be sure to like, subscribe, click the red little bell thing, comment, do the friend thing. Find me on Twitter. Find us on Facebook. Find us everywhere on the internet. Go to the website. Go to publicspaceassociation.space. That's pretty much it. That's all I can think of for now. Okay. So we'll see you later.